Welcome and bienvenidos to our new program called Next Generation, highlighting the many creative journeys of next generation leaders. In this series, I will bring you the stories of young leaders in science, literature, medicine, education, and business. Those who have chosen to reach further, travel farther, innovate, and take the risks often necessary to make a difference in their own lives, in those of their families, their communities, and someday in the world. My name is Julieta Garcia. For over 22 years, I had the great privilege of serving as president of the University of Texas at Brownsville. Through that work, I came to know the stories of many of our students that overcame great obstacles to attend college and through great sacrifice of their own and of their families, make it through. Getting to know their stories was always a great inspiration to me. So I thought I'd chase some of them down, interview them, and let you hear in their own words what they're up to now, what their challenges were, and what they hope to accomplish in the future. I promise you will be as inspired, amazed, and humbled by their accomplishments as I have been. Now let's get started. This morning I have the great honor of interviewing Yvonne Valdez, a former student of UT Brownsville, who's had an illustrious academic journey and who's now doing some very exciting work in Boston. So we begin with Yvonne growing up here in Brownsville as a student at Lopez. Is that right?
That is correct.
And tell me about your time at Lopez. I understand you not only were in love with science, but you developed a great interest in music.
Actually, that's right, Dr. Garcia. I went to Lopez High School actually because my plans were to become a music teacher. I really had a passion for music ever since I first started playing the trumpet and the piano back when I was in middle school. I went to Falk Middle School. And so, at the time, Lopez High School was a fine arts school, and I was very involved in the band, all types of bands, the jazz band, the symphony, extracurriculars when it came to that. And I think that I always tell my teachers back in high school and in music that I think that all the discipline that I learned while being in the band really helped me out a lot as I was progressing through my academic career later in science, in college, and as well in graduate school. I still have a lot of that.
That's so interesting because we hear that from lots of students who say that side of the brain works really well when you connect the discipline of music, as you say, with the discipline of science and the formation of new ideas. So I'm interested very much in learning about that connection with our students. So from Lopez, while you were at Lopez, you received some awards with a trumpet. Is that right?
I did, yes. I was involved in, trying out for the different all-city, all-region, and all-state competitions. Well, actually, with the trumpet, I made it to the regional level as both classical music and jazz. But surprisingly, even though I was not part of the choir, and I still auditioned for the state, and I ended up being, in the state choir in Texas. So that was fun.
No kidding. Well, fun enough for you to place first in Texas and second in a national competition in trumpet. So you have to trumpet your own accomplishments too, Yvonne. So you finished at Lopez and you chose to come to University of Texas at Brownsville. Now, of course, University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. And why UT Brownsville?
That's an interesting question, Dr. Garcia. There's a lot of things that played a role in my decision to stay at UTB. At first, my plans straight out of high school were to go to Baylor College. That was my plan. But I really wanted to be close to family. I started to know a lot of my friends were going to UTB, and I really knew that there was a lot of resources that I could take advantage of at UTB. So that being close to family and knowing that I could get what I wanted at UTB and then eventually continue after UTB to graduate school.
So it made a lot of sense to begin here, stay close to family, have an affordable undergraduate education, but not neglect your interest in science. And so you were able to get a position at UT Brownsville working in a lab. Is that correct?
That is correct. And that happened in the second year of my time at UTB. I joined the Embryo-Arrest Rice program. I still remember the day that I saw an ad, at UTB by where the DNA structure was. And it said they were looking for a research assistant at a laboratory as part of the MBRS RISE program. And I immediately applied. And I was very interested in learning about the research that was going on in Dr. Colom's lab at the time, which was an Alzheimer's lab. And so, I decided to apply, and I thought it was good.
And that opportunity to do basic foundational lab work in an undergraduate degree program is very unique, and certainly something that the university, now as UT RGV, is trying to continue to expand for students. So you worked with Dr. Luis Colom, and we all remember Dr. Colom's wonderful smile and his great abrazos, and along with that, his fervor for getting and creating opportunities for new scientists. So what kind of opportunity did you have in his lab then?
I mean, working in the laboratory of Dr. Colom, I think, was great. As you mentioned, his personality was just really inspired a lot of passion, and just for everybody that was around him, he just made people happy. And he was actually one of my greatest influences as to why I decided to continue on going to graduate school. I kind of saw the way that he could influence people, and I thought maybe one day I want to be like that, and I want to have that opportunity as well to be able to do that with other students. So I decided to apply to graduate school because of him.
So there was a program that allowed you to get to Cornell for some summer study and research. Tell us a little bit about that.
So like I mentioned, this was part of the MBRS RISE program, and one of the requirements for that program at the time was to be involved in research outside of the university as part of a summer program. And as part of the MBRS RISE program, we got the opportunity to attend conferences just to get to know recruiters at other universities and explore the opportunities out there. And I remember one day we went to a national conference, and I saw the Cornell booth. And, to be honest, I was a little bit intimidated to apply to Cornell because I said, maybe that's too far away. And also maybe I would not get accepted. But I said, I'm only going to have this opportunity once. If we're actually talking to the recruiter at the university. And I just talked to the recruiter from Cornell, and I sent my application. And sure enough, just a few weeks later, I got a call saying that I was one of 6 students that got accepted for that summer internship at Cornell.
And I remember something about that recruiter. I think it was a young lady scientist also who said, I'm going to try to recruit you to Cornell, but I'm also going to try to help you get to other universities because you're just an extraordinary young man that should have doors open for them. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So that actually was my mentor, my PI at Cornell. So once I got into Cornell, I actually asked to be placed in a neuroscience laboratory, but they decided to place me in the laboratory of the associate dean of the university, of the medical school at Cornell. And later on, I asked her, why that was the case, and she said, well, out of all the applicants, I saw your application, and I really wanted you to be part of my lab. So we ended up getting along very well. And then a year later at another conference, just similar to the one, where I went when I was an undergraduate at UTB, I saw her at the conference, and I told her that I was interested in applying to Cornell, but I was also very interested in applying to graduate school at Harvard. And she said, oh, well, that's great. And she took me and talked to the recruiter at Harvard, at one of these conferences, and she said, this is Ivan. He's my student. He's my summer student, and I just want to let you know that if you don't accept him at graduate school, we will certainly accept him at Cornell. And I think that really, was something memorable for the recruiter at the time from Harvard, which actually ended up being who's now the associate dean at Harvard. So I think, networking is certainly really important, and it plays a big role in students' lives, I think.
Absolutely. And so remind me of her name, at the one at Cornell.
Sure. So my mentor at Cornell was Dr. Randy Silver, and then the associate dean at Harvard, or the recruiter at the time, is Dr. Sheila Thomas. And up to this day, we still keep in touch and always asking for her for advice. And when it comes to my plans, and she's very engaged.
So all of a sudden, you start out at UT Brownsville, and now you're at the College of Medicine at Cornell, and being considered for a position at Harvard. Now that's a huge jump. Tell me a little bit about what that felt like when you were actually going through it. It must have been an extraordinary feeling to imagine, is this really happening? And is it really happening to me?
Yeah, like I mentioned, I met the recruiter at Harvard, and I said, why, might as well. Just like I learned my lesson back when I was in college, you're only going to have this opportunity once, so just give it a shot. And I applied to Harvard, not really expecting much, but I thought it was worth a shot. And sure enough, just 2 months later, I got a call directly from that person, from Dr. Sheila Thomas at Harvard. It was a call directly from her. And, she told me, congratulations, Ivan. I just want to let you know that you have been accepted to Harvard University for a PhD in biomedical science. And I remember, my mom says that day actually that after I hung up the phone and I told her the news, that I was really pale. I was really struck by the news. And it was so exciting to hear that.
Absolutely. It had to be a shock to everybody in the family. And tell me a little bit about your mom and dad.
Yeah, so my parents, both from Mexico, they decided to come to the United States when I was 2 years old because they thought we were going to have better opportunities here in the United States. And I remember as I was growing up, my dad were working so much, working a lot, sometimes multiple jobs at a time, and always wanted to provide for us so we can have a better life and more opportunities here. And that was one of my great motivations to excel academically, because I knew that if I tried hard in school, I could eventually do something not only big for me, but I always tell my mom, I'm going to go to graduate school, and when I graduate, I'm going to share that degree with you because all of the hard work, you've done for me, it's a way to pay you back. Although it's never going to be enough to pay how much my parents have worked.
Did they ever hesitate about you going so far away to Boston and Cambridge?
No, actually, I was the one who hesitated. I remember just maybe a couple of weeks before I had to leave from Brownsville to come to Harvard, I was telling my mom, maybe I should stay at UT Brownsville. Maybe I should continue graduate school here because, I do think that we have all the resources here. And my mom at the time, she said, no, you cannot do that. I would not let you do that. You really have to go take advantage of this great opportunity. And she did not hesitate at all. But then later on, she confessed to me that she really wanted me to stay as a mom, of course, but she pushed me, and I certainly do not regret it. So I'm not going to lie, it was very difficult at times, especially during my first year in graduate school. The transition from Brownsville to Boston is so big for many reasons. One of them being the weather. So different.
We were worried about you when you left. I remember we were thinking, he's a small man, and he's going to be so cold over there. We were worried you get too cold and come home. Luckily, that didn't happen.
I remember, Dr. Garcia, you being concerned about that and wishing me to stay warm while I was in Boston.
I did. I was very worried about you, but so were lots of other people because we wanted the very, very best for you. So now you're headed to, or you're in Cambridge and you're going to school. That must have been a kind of a surreal experience for you.
Yes, it absolutely was. One of the things that I noticed that I really liked about being at Harvard was that I noticed that all of my classmates were, of course, they're extremely intelligent people, very, very talented in the laboratories and science. But what I really liked was that everybody seemed to be, passionate about something else other than academics. Somebody was either really good at, sports, or they were really good at, choreography or dancing, or that I realized that because during my first year in graduate school, close to this, during almost the second year of graduate school, we had a play that all the first years have to give for the newer incoming students for the next generation, and we had to participate in the play. And I remember my classmates were so talented in writing the script, acting, singing. I was actually the one who sang. Lion King was the theme of the play.
Oh, I didn't know you were a singer too, Ivan.
I participated as a singer, so I really enjoyed being around people who are so talented, but also have other passions outside of school and just the laboratory.
And that's marvelous for us to remember, because we've got to be broad in our understanding and our quest for information and in enjoyment in life, because you can't be serious all the time and not spend time being with each other and making new friends. So now you're at Harvard. You're learning that you fit in because you're smart also and you're talented in lots of other ways. And then you're beginning to think about what you're going to study for your doctoral studies. And as I understand it, when you were a first year doctoral student, you heard a Japanese scientist who was a Nobel Prize winner who came on campus to have a lecture. Tell me about that lecture and how it propelled you to study.
Yeah, Dr. Garcia. So that doctor is actually Dr. Yamanaka in Japan, who discovered that there was a way to convert any type of mature cell in the body back to a embryonic stem cell. So it's not an embryonic stem cell. It's an induced pluripotent stem cell. And stem cells have the ability to be converted into any other type in the body. And so you can just imagine all the applications that would have for example, getting a skin cell from a patient and converting that to a stem cell that can give you the ability to convert that later on to any sort of mature cell, like a neuron for the brain, or in my case, a pancreatic beta cell for the pancreas. So when I heard about that research, and I was also in a class learning about it, I said, I need to find a laboratory at Harvard that is involved in that. And I found the laboratory of Dr. Kulkarni, who was also working in diabetes research. And I said, I think diabetes is something that is becoming an epidemic, and it's a really serious concern nationwide, and also has significant consequences down there in the Rio Grande Valley. So combining both diabetes research and stem cell research, I thought it was great for what I wanted to do in my graduate school career.
It's fascinating how those two ideas connected. And I remember you telling me about having heard the Japanese scientist, Nobel Prize winner Yamanaka, and talking about his discovery and how you realized that night when you were listening to his lecture that kind of a whole new world had opened up for you. And often that happens to us. It's one lecture, one idea that comes from a lecture that can spur you to think in a whole new way. And then to find Professor Kulkarni and combine that work with the idea of how could it help us with the study of how to help those who have diabetes is fantastic. Now, I also read that when you joined that work with the new professor, you were looking at then beta cell regeneration and its implication for controlling diabetes. Tell us a little bit more about, was that a novel idea at the time?
It was a very novel idea. I mean, because if we have embryonic stem cells already, and that had been around for many, many years. But there's a lot of problems with working with embryonic stem cells, one of them being, the ethical considerations of working with that. So, having the ability to get a mature stem cell, and like I remember telling you, it's sort of like rewinding that biological clock and making that cell become a baby, so to say. It was, had huge implications, and that was a novel concept. Nobody had ever done it. And it also was a very simple way of doing it. It only took 4 proteins to make that mature cell become a stem cell. So, I was very, very excited about that.
So one of the things that the professor said was that it's so marvelous to have young students, young graduate, in your case, doctoral students in labs, because they often connect dots that a more traditional professor who's been at it for a while failed to see, and that it was your idea about that perhaps there could be what you were talking about, pancreatic plasticity, with the idea that cells could convert from one cell type to another cell type, kind of coaxing them into transforming into insulin-producing beta cells. That's extraordinary. And where is that idea now in research?
Sure. So what you're referring to is called cellular transdifferentiation, and as you mentioned, is the ability of one type of cell to be converted into another type of cell. And so from my interest in induced pluripotent stem cells came that idea. And you're right, I actually read about that happening in other organs of the body, but not necessarily within the pancreas. And I suggested to my PI, you know what, let's try to look at the cells that are already in the pancreas to see if they can maybe be converted to what we really needed for diabetes, which is a pancreatic beta cell. So I recommended that to my PI in graduate school, and even though it was not part of his research, it was not part of his grants, that he got from the NIH, he told me to go ahead and do that research, and that actually eventually became my thesis research: how to convert a pancreatic ductal cell within the pancreas to learn about the mechanisms of how that cell under stressful conditions can become a pancreatic beta cell. So I remember when I first started this research, there was not a lot in the field of diabetes, but as I was conducting my investigation and I eventually published my research, the field just grew a lot. And I was recently looking at that publication that I had in graduate school, and it's been cited several times by other scientists around the world. So I think the field is growing, and it's very exciting.
So while you were being mentored, Yvonne, there at Harvard yourself, you decided to also do a little bit of mentoring for others. You worked for a while at the Boston Public Schools, at Bunker Hill Community College with students, and also there at Harvard as a science mentor. Tell us a little bit about your experience there mentoring other students.
Sure. So my experience when it comes to that is it's different kinds of experiences, actually. My second year in graduate school, I had the opportunity to go around Boston Public Schools to teach science to summer students. And that was more of a traditional, you stand up in front of a class and you teach students about science. And these are middle school and high school students as part of summer camp. And, my approach to teaching at the time was, I need to find a way of making science memorable to students. And my topic, as part of that program I was involved in, was to teach them about microbiology and the different microorganisms. So I said, instead of standing up here and lecturing students, I want to make this a little more interactive. So, the activity that I ended up showing my students was that for example, if you consider a marshmallow to be a virus, if you keep that same proportions, then I remember showing them a Twinkie. I took Twinkies to class, and if a marshmallow is a virus, then a Twinkie bread, it's a bacterium. It's actually a prokaryotic cell. Now, if you compare that to a eukaryotic cell, which is what we humans are made of, then we actually need to step outside of the classroom. Also, it really depends on the type of cell, but some of the eukaryotic cells are really large, and you had to step out of the classroom. We went to a basketball court, and you said, well, now compare this little marshmallow compared to that Twinkie, and then compare it to here, the size of the basketball court. And I remember seeing a lot of my students smile and think, wow, that's really impressive. And I think teaching science in that way really, like I said, is memorable, and it really makes more of an impact than just learning, which after all, science is more than just a subject or more than just reading about something. It's actually understanding and visualizing and see how it applies to you in real life. But then I also participated in mentoring, more of a one-on-one opportunities, and also how to talking to Boston high school students about careers in science, how tell them about the opportunities there are in research, and just guiding them through the whole college process and transitioning to high school and transitioning to college, and then eventually graduate school or medical school if that's what they were interested in.
So what I hear from this is that you've decided to also gift your talents and your own experience and the mentorship that you received to provide it for others along the way. And that's very, very much needed and obviously very, very much appreciated. So now let me go fast forward a little bit. So you're at Harvard, you survived being separated from your family. You talk to your mom and dad a lot, don't you?
I call him every day. Yes.
I remember you telling me that, thinking, what a lucky mom and dad that he calls every day, even when he is so far away. But what people don't understand is you're doing it for yourself, too, not only for mom and dad, but it feels good to stay connected to home.
That is right.
So now you're about to graduate from Harvard. They go up there for your ceremony. I remember seeing pictures of them at your ceremony. They must have been in complete awe at the environment that you were in and at your success in that difficult environment.
Yes, Dr. Garcia. So I flew them over to Boston, and there's another picture that I have of them where they're walking around in Boston, and they're just looking up. They're just so amazed at all of the buildings. My parents have never really left Brownsville or the Rio Grande Valley area, other than Mexico, of course. So for them coming to Boston, they were just amazed with the city. And my mom always tells me, please don't post pictures of Boston because it makes me sad. I really miss. I want to go back and I want to see that. It makes me nostalgic. But yeah, so I flew my parents over for graduation, and I was fortunate enough to have them be here and accompany me during graduation, which was a very special day for me.
Of course. So then you make it through graduation, and you have to have a job now. Tell us what you're doing in the world of science these days.
Sure. So I graduated with my degree in biomedical sciences, and having spent 6 years in the bench, I decided that I wanted to learn a little bit more about how, bench research is taken, from the lab into actually become a therapeutic. And I think Boston is really the capital of the world when it comes to that, because there are many, many biotech companies and many pharmaceutical companies here, many businesses that are involved in that. So what I'm doing now is I'm at a life sciences strategy consulting firm in Boston, and what we do is basically there's a bunch of people who graduated with their PhDs in biomedical sciences, and what we do is we advise other companies on how to take their basic research into eventual clinical trials and then eventually therapeutics to the market.
Well, who would have thought that this young boy from Falk Junior High and then Lopez High School and then UT Brownsville, now UTRGV, and now Harvard and Cornell under his belt would end up in such a magnificent field on the cutting edge of new science. We congratulate you, Ivan, very, very much. You have about one more minute now to give some advice and inspiration to our students, in addition to what you've already said. If you had them right here in front of you, and you were as excited as I am listening to you and understanding your success, what would you tell a student that's a little concerned about, is that for me? Do you think I could do that also? Sure.
What I would really tell students is to take advantage of all the opportunities that they have, because while doing so, I think they will be able to find something that they're really passionate about. And when you find that something that you're passionate about, and in my case is science, I think everything becomes much easier, and you really, really enjoy what you're doing. So I do want to say for students at UTRGV to talk to professors, to network, to hear about their stories. I think they would learn a lot, and I will also recommend for them to explore, because and by that I mean to travel, to go out and to do new things. And then my plan has always been to eventually come back to the Rio Grande Valley. So I think that if you go out and explore, you would be able to grow a lot as a person, and then come back and help your community and help other students grow as well.
Well, thank you, Ivan. We hope that you'll be able to do that in the Rio Grande Valley. We hope that we'll be the beginning of biotechnology as kind of a foundational industry for us. We have great faith that what you dream, you can do. Muchísimas gracias, Ivan, for taking so much of your valuable time to tell us your story and to send a very strong message of hope to our students. Adios.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Dr. Garcia. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Next Generation as we talk to Ivan Valdez, a student who started out in Brownsville, ended up at Harvard with his PhD, and is now working for a biotech firm in Boston. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to having you hear our next episode of Next Generation.